All right, I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Okay, I'm going to start slow. Always good to start slow on these live streams so that people have a chance to get in here. We are doing this a little bit different this week than we were doing it the last 2 months. So the last 2 months, what we did here was I opened up, this is the $15 tier to be on the YouTube live stream. We have a whole bunch of different ways at the moment where we're able to communicate with you guys via the Patreon app, via the one-on-one hangouts, the group hangouts, all of those things. The last 2 months that we've done this, we've opened this up to a whole bunch of other tiers. I just felt that I wanted the conversations to be broader. I wanted to hear more questions and all that. Obviously, we can't do that forever because I can't have you guys at the $15 tier always footing the bill for the people at the lower tiers. Although, is our broadcast working right now? David, can you jump in here? Apparently something's going on with the broadcast. Let's see. I think maybe something just freaked out. I'm just going to keep talking, but I think the stream might have just freaked for a second. Anyway, what I decided was that we couldn't have you guys footing the bill for the people at the lower tiers. We did it for 2 months. My hope is a few people would up their. Is the stream working?
Well, it hasn't been posted on Patreon yet. Is anyone in there?
Yeah, we got 3 people in here. Right. I think. Okay. Sorry, guys. Let me reset here all together. It's been a crazy day. These Patreon days are truly crazy. I know I say it every month, but starting from like 8 a.m. going till we'll wrap this at 8 p.m. With just tiny little breaks in between. What's up?
Keep going.
It can be a hectic day. Anyway, okay, so here we go. First off, Emma is very excited for the live stream, as you can see. All right, so obviously today was a bit of a crazy day. I'm going to put some of the Patreon stuff aside for just a moment. So I've been talking to you guys all day, and obviously there was a certain amount of talk about what happened in Las Vegas. Now, because I was doing the Patreon chats all day, my ability to follow the news every 2 seconds as to what was unfolding wasn't so great. So I might be a little bit behind on what happened. I mean, more than anything else, I just thought I would just share like just sort of 2 or 3 initial thoughts on this. First off, I got up this morning and I looked at Twitter. I don't bring, one of the things that I'm doing that I'm very happy about since my little off the grid situation is I do not bring my phone into my bedroom. So the phone is not the last thing I look at night, and it is not the first thing I look at in the morning. Anyway, I was making my coffee this morning, and I jumped on Twitter, and I saw it was actually Antonia Okafor, who's been a guest on the show. I saw she had a tweet, and it's something like 50 dead, 400 injured in Las Vegas. And I really thought it was a mistake because those numbers are so crazy. I really thought for a second she meant like 5 and 40 or I don't know what. And then quickly, unfortunately, learned that wasn't a mistake. And my initial reaction, first, there's just this feeling, there was like sort of like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like those numbers are so absolutely horrific. And then the next is just sort of, there's this odd numbness. Like these things keep happening, whether they're terrorist attacks or whether they're random shooters, whether there's a political motive or not. All of those things aside for a moment, just this endlessness, coupled with just the endless outrage machine that we have going on at all times. And all the noise that you're hearing at all times, it does make it hard, I think, to like gauge these things properly when they happen. Anyway, I did read some more about it. From where I'm at the moment, and I might be a little bit behind, it sounds like they don't know much about the motive yet. There's kind of saying this guy just snapped. I know ISIS claim responsibility, but sometimes they claim responsibility for things that they didn't do. They're saying maybe he converted to Islam a few months ago. All of that stuff is just pure speculation. The simple fact is that there are 50 some odd people dead, another 400 or 500 injured. I think it's the biggest mass shooting in American history. And the one thing I tweeted, I think 2 things about it today. One was actually a quote from one of you guys on Patreon, Dog Jones, who I've gotten to know pretty well over the course of this last year through the chats that we do. He had a good tweet that you can, or a good comment that you can see. But my real thought was, this is, everyone says it's not the time to talk this, it's not the time to talk that, it's not the time to talk politics, but I actually genuinely meant it today. I know people say it all the time and then they don't really mean it, but I genuinely meant it. Like the idea of all of these dead people, all this horrific attack, and that all of these people were going to be sitting behind their computers trying to get the most retweets out of somebody, or trying to get the most shares or likes or whatever the hell you want to call it, whatever thing you're using. It was really kind of nauseating to me. So the fact that I was doing the Hangouts with you guys all day today and was able to get away from that a little bit was actually nice. And that was my one thought on it. Now, look, obviously there's going to be a lot more discussion. The immediate knee-jerk reaction for people, the certain amount of people that blame guns, certain amount of people that blame religion or whatever it is, and just everyone just kind of picks their team. I mean, the gun thing, and especially when there's so many deaths like this, it's one of those things that kind of just brings out the partisanship in everybody. And I just don't think it helps anybody. I think it makes us all worse, and I just didn't want anything to do with it today. So I hope you don't mind if I took a little more time off Twitter. Anyway, and actually the first person that I spoke to Skype with this morning is a guy who I've gotten to know pretty well, who's been a patron since the beginning, since June. No, I think actually maybe even since before last June, when we officially launched on Patreon. We had a few people supporting us when we were still over at Aura TV, and I think Brian was one of them. And he wasn't around for his Skype at 8 a.m. this morning, and he's in Vegas. And of course, I immediately thought that maybe something happened or something. Turns out he's okay, and he runs a company in Vegas who was dealing with some stuff. But I did chat with someone else today, Cameron in Vegas, who was telling me some things about what it was like to be there today and all that stuff. In any event, so we don't have to talk too much about that. You guys can ask me some questions about it, but as I said, I'm not fully up to date on exactly what happened because I've been doing this with you guys. So I know you guys, there's a lot of things to talk about, but first I just want to tell you a couple cool things because patronage does have its rewards. So you guys will officially be the first to know 3 upcoming guests on the Rubin Report, and at least one of them probably, I think, is the most requested guest ever, and we finally got him. So first, Nigel Farage is coming on probably in the next couple weeks, and of course Nigel was instrumental in the whole Brexit happening. So we'll have him on. Then we've got Anthony Scaramucci. You guys all know the Mooch, who was the shortest ever communications director of the White House for 10 days. Apparently he's a fan of the show. He's going to come on. And then finally, and I just heard this one literally in the last hour, we have been trying to get Thomas Sowell, Dr. Thomas Sowell, for probably 3 years, probably about 3 years, 2-3 years at least. And we finally, I've worked every connection known to man. I've tried. He's retired, so he doesn't do much press anymore. But it sounds like finally he's willing to do it. So I just sent the email to make that happen. So I'm incredibly excited about that. All right, so we're going to take some questions, and I know a lot of you guys, watch this when it's tape delayed or whatever the hell you call it. So some of you guys watching it now, I'm happy to have as much interaction as there is. I see somebody says I didn't want to hear politics at all today. Yeah. I get it. I get it. I saw immediately a tweet from Hillary about the NRA. And it's like, we just have no idea. Did this guy get the guns legally? Did he not get the guns legally? Do we know what his political motivations are? Do we know if he's on prescription drugs, or is he going through a divorce, or does he have bipolar disorder or anything? But to immediately then turn this into the NRA this, or Republicans hate people because they want guns, and all, like, just the discussion is so rotten the way everyone does it. So I just didn't want anything to do it today. So, okay. So thanks for the Candace Owens interview. Really fantastic guest with an interesting perspective. My jaw hit the floor when she talked about Zoe Quinn and the reaction to her idea. So first off, I really, really loved Candace. I had seen 2 or 3 of her videos. A whole bunch of people had been tweeting me to have her on. And I thought she was funny. She seemed smart and bright, and that she kind of knew what was up, and this struck me as someone that was taking what is thought of as an unpopular position by people in sort of what they would tell you is the mainstream Black community, and she's taking another position. I know several people, and I'm friends with several people that do this type of thing. In this case, specifically to the Black community. Larry Elder, who's been on the show a couple times, and we've become good buddies, and my friend David Webb, who hasn't been on the show yet, but he's on Sirius XM, and he happens to be a Black conservative. I thought she was just adding an interesting voice to this, but I didn't know what to expect. And when I've had YouTubers on, sometimes it's a little different because YouTubers, they're used to doing this, right? They're used to talking directly into the camera. They're used to jump cuts and all this stuff. So sometimes when you sit across from them, I've found that it isn't always like the greatest interview ever. Sometimes you have to coax a little more out of them, got to work a little bit harder, whatever is the case. she knew her stuff inside and out. She was clear, like just like a diamond, just staring right into me the entire time. Fearless, didn't mind, by the way, to occasionally say she wasn't sure about this or that, or wasn't ready to say she has an opinion on this or that, which is a really great thing, actually. So we had a great conversation. We wrapped up, I think we did that at about 3 o'clock Pacific, wrapped up at about, what, 4:30 or so. She and her friend that she was here with ended up staying for dinner, and the four of us hung out till about 2 a.m. And many bottles of wine later, we were just talking all night. Couldn't have a better time. I can tell we're immediately going to be friends, and I'm happy about that. We did not try to find Kanye. She just stayed here for dinner. We were going to try to find Kanye, but it was going to be a whole situation. But I believe that she will meet Kanye. It's probably meant to be. But yes, I thought the reaction to her, of course, was over the top. I mean, people absolutely loving her. I did see a couple of people that were saying just the usual things that they're going to say to people like this, and some pretty awful language and all that. She's a big girl and she'll deal with it. I think more than anything else, though, it's a great example of why you have to judge people as individuals. This girl has thoughts that are thought of as not what people want a certain amount of black people to think. I would say the people that are thinking that and saying that are the actual racists. That's what we talked about. Because prejudice, what is prejudice? As I say all the time, it is prejudging. And if you look at someone at the color of their skin, and you're like, well, you shouldn't think this way because you look like that. Well, this inherently is actually prejudice. I think she's going to be a voice to reckon with. I'm thrilled that I was able to help put her on the map a little bit more. And I think she's got a really bright future in front of her. My buddy Dog Jones, thanks so much for the retweet, Dave. It means the world to me, but my phone has been blowing up all day. How do you do it? Do you only get notifications from certain people? So Dog Jones is the guy who commented on Patreon, something about his feelings about the day, which I did share on Twitter. I saw one of them, I think got around 1,000 retweets or something. I don't put notifications on. If I had notifications on, my phone would literally be blowing up all day. It would actually be hot and burning. My notifications are just completely insane. I guess it's somewhat of a function of, having an audience and doing some relevant stuff. Turn off your notifications if it's bothering you. I can't even imagine having notifications turned on. That seems crazy to me. Unfortunately, and if you guys saw my interview with David Smalley from this morning, which I'm happy to talk about, by the way, we got into the weeds on some of the Twitter stuff and just the endless fighting and all that stuff. I mean, Twitter 2 years ago was sort of a very cool, fun, hip thing, I think, and it was a great way to connect with so many people. And unfortunately, I think the trolls are starting to control it, and it's bringing out the worst in almost everybody. So I'm trying to figure out a way that I can make my Twitter use more productive or a little less painful, at least. Which is why it's nice that when I have a day like this, where basically, I'm indoors all day long, just sitting in here, and but I can still get away from it is actually kind of nice. It was a great interview. I think they're referring to Candace. And before it, I never considered the left might bully themselves, and now feel like, of course they do. I might have missed exactly what you're saying there. Yeah, I mean, what I'm consistently seeing right now. Here, I'll tell you something. So I went to Harvard. I mentioned this to a few people today. I went to Harvard with Brett Weinstein and Steve Simpson from the Ayn Rand Institute. Did a talk in front of a couple, I don't know, I'm not sure, maybe 100 kids or so. It was 200 kids. I'm not really sure. We live streamed it, so if you haven't seen it, it's on our channel here. And by the way, you guys help fund us, our ability to do things like that. ARI does pay us to do it, but my ability to take time off and go there and make that a show for the week and everything else is partly because of you guys. So we went there to Harvard, and it was great. And we were sponsored by a group called the Open Campus Initiative, which is a new thing this year. I was the first guest of this new program at Harvard, where they're going to try to bring people across the political spectrum. And they want me to come back and maybe moderate some conversations, whatever. So the Open Campus Initiative, and then there were a couple other groups like the Objectivists and the Libertarians and a few others that co-sponsored it. So anyway, we had a great event. And if you haven't watched it, I welcome you to watch it. There was actually some controversial stuff said. Steve Simpson made an interesting argument about why public spaces shouldn't be used for all these free speech rallies. I had never heard an argument like that before. He was actually arguing directly against Skokie versus Illinois, which many of you know was when the neo-Nazis basically wanted to march in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood in Chicago, and the Supreme Court said you have to let them on public space. I've never heard an argument against that before, which he made. I think there's something interesting there. He and Brett disagreed on one or two things. And actually, Brett and I had a little disagreement on something. But putting all that aside, we had a great conversation. Really enjoyed the Q&A. I mean, these just bright college students, especially at Harvard. I mean, really bright college students that want to figure out what's what, make some sense of the world. Anyway, I bring this all up because afterwards I went to a dinner with about 30 of the college students, and I think it was mostly the kids. It was from this open initiative club and the libertarians. So about 30 kids were all sitting at a big table, and they're all kind of asking me questions, talking about YouTube and blah blah blah. And I was like, I'd much rather hear from you guys if you don't mind. And we kind of went around the table. I was just like, could you just everybody tell me like one thing that's on your mind right now? And almost without fail, every one of them said that they're basically afraid to share their political ideas on campus. Now, think about this for a second. This was basically a group of libertarians. By the way, there were some Latinos there and some Black people and some white people. And yes, there were a couple gay people and all, and there were girls and guys and all that other diversity nonsense, okay? So they were all there. So I'm just putting that out. But they were all saying that they are afraid to talk about what they think about politics because they're being called racist and whatever, and they don't want to, get into fights with friends and all this stuff, so they don't post stuff online. One of them was doxxed after he put some stuff up. So think about that, though. These are libertarians. I wasn't at an alt-right meeting, whatever the hell that is. I was not at a far-right meeting. I wasn't at some anti-immigration thing or whatever else you might think out there. I was at a libertarian meeting. These guys were basically for limited government, states' rights, individual liberty, low taxes, stuff like that. An incredibly welcoming group of people. And by the way, Brett Weinstein, I think he still says he's a progressive, even though he's been basically tossed out by the progressives after what happened at Evergreen State. But he was at the dinner as well. And we had a really interesting political discussion that many of them obviously are further to the right, they're libertarians, than he is. We had an interesting discussion about racism and all this stuff. And it was great. Everyone was into this whole debate. There was nothing hostile. There was nothing mean. I don't think anyone's feelings were hurt. Everyone dealt with it in a mature way. So I mention all of this because I think it was enlightening to me to sit around a table of 30 kids from Harvard who said they can't talk about being libertarians. I mean, how much more? I've heard this when I've gone to schools before, this general concept, but for some reason, this one struck me in a particularly disturbing way. Anyway, I'm going to keep going to these colleges and keep talking to these people. Actually, in 2 weeks, we'll be at Clemson University. I'll be there with Jordan Peterson, which we also will be live streaming on the channel. And then hopefully Jordan and I will go out to dinner with some students. Maybe we'll do a little video on the fly while we're doing that. We'll see. Okay, let's see. I know a bunch of you guys are talking about the Vegas situation. As an Australian, I don't understand America's obsession with guns. We changed our gun laws after a mass shooting event here, and since then we haven't had another. Laws can change if there is the will to do so. Something about, okay, well, let me just put that down for a sec. I'll deal with one thing at a time. So I'm seeing these fly in, and sometimes they coming up and they move real fast. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of the really complex issues of our time. I believe in the right to bear arms. The Second Amendment, I believe that. You have a right to be able to defend yourself, to defend your property, your home, your family, okay? I don't have a gun. And for the first time in the last year, as I have, I guess I talk about certain things or, people sending me hostile emails and whatever, it's the first time in my life that I've really at least considered it. And I know Steven Crowder was maybe going to do a gift a gun to me thing, and it's very difficult to do in California or something, but at least I've considered it. I have cameras outside of my house, and I have to take I can't just tweet where I am to meet people and blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is me. I think you guys understand that this is not like, I'm not some, flame-throwing evil monster. Although certain people want to portray you that way, if you don't bow to their ideology, and that's part of the problem. So I think in this case, so Australia did do that, and I guess your point is that it's working. Here, there's a different, because of the way we gained independence through an authoritarian power that was thousands of miles away, I think Americans have a healthy distrust of government. I think in some ways Americans should have even more of a distrust of government, I think. But yes, are militias ever going to overtake the oppressive government that's going to have machine guns and tanks and all that stuff? Probably not. But we have to have an honest discussion about this. I mean, I think the simplest way you can talk about guns in a sensible way is this. Look, it's not about the weapons specifically, because if you're listening to this and you're a sane, decent human being, you know that it is not right to kill innocent people. So that means that if I had a gun here that could mow down, do exactly what this guy did in Vegas, I would not do it, which means, and most people would not do it, by the way, the vast, 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 vast majority of people would not do it. So this inherently means that it has something to do with either a mental state or an ideology. So, okay, so we can talk about any religious ideology that would lead people to do this, but there's also other ideologies. You could be an extreme prepper or something. I don't know, something. Whatever it could be. You could be some crazy anti-government extremist or whatever. Okay, or some far left nutbag or whatever it is. You know, Antifa uses plenty of violence. Okay, so we can talk about that, and then we can also talk about mental health. We have a massive mental health problem in this country. Every freaking commercial that you watch is for another drug to make you happier or make you stand up or make you sit down. And they all have horrible side effects that seemingly are worse than the symptoms you had in the first place. So now you're not depressed, but you're having diarrhea and you're puking and your legs don't move and you're having thoughts of suicide. We have a mental health problem coupled with we're not talking about what's really going on here. And then people have access to these guns. So I don't know. I want to do more on guns. I've talked to people on both sides of the gun issue. I don't know that I certainly am not for banning guns. Is there a way to do a better job to keep guns out of the hands of people that would do this? Perhaps, and I would like to explore that. Do we have an odd fascination with guns and a sort of obsession with guns in this country that other countries don't seem to have? We do. So how do we deal with this in a honest and mature way? We have to have a conversation across the board. But if your initial reaction every time that there's a shooting is to say we have to change the Second Amendment, or we have to change all of these laws, but we're not even going to address mental health. We're not going to address ideology and all those things. You're not going to get anywhere. And if anything, you're just going to strengthen the people against you, which is why every time Obama talked about guns, it was almost evident that in the next 2-3 days, the gun sales were going to go up. So we have to figure out a way to talk about it, honestly, and I hope we do. We need to learn to be patient for a full picture and not be so knee-jerk. Passing laws cannot stop this stuff. I mean, I basically agree with that premise. We need to try to figure out what happened here. We also have to remember that for all the violence we see, all the hate we see, all the ways that we talk to each other online and all this stuff, that we still live, I think, by most estimations, in one of the most peaceful times ever. And we can't get caught up in thinking that if this guy, well, I guess this guy is white. Now, does this mean I saw these people, oh, you see these old white men that are doing this? Well, these are the same people when someone does an attack in the name of radical Islam, we'll say everyone's saying all Muslims, when virtually no one says all Muslims. So we all need to learn how to be better about some of this stuff. But your second part, passing laws cannot stop this stuff. I basically do agree with that. Now, that doesn't mean we can't try to figure out what some of the holes in the system may be, but that may be dealing better with the mental health problems we have, or dealing better with figuring out the roots of radical extremism and religious extremism and all that stuff. But I agree that passing laws, so we magically pass some laws tomorrow, guess what? There are so many guns out there on the streets. If someone wants to do this, they can. So that it's a multifaceted thing. Someone said, I turned everything off for a while. I don't know who made me sicker, the politicians or the press. I hear you. I really hear you on that. That knee-jerk need to score points. It's just kind of gross. We're all, you know what? There was a certain theme today when I was talking to everybody, that, it does seem like, okay, we've been talking about it for years on this show about the left going haywire. Now it seems like certain elements of the right are going haywire. These things flip and they're cyclical and all of that stuff. What if actually what's happening here is that the sides actually are going so extreme that there is a true groundswell in the middle of people trying to come together, but we just don't know it yet? I do think that's possible. I see the rate of growth we're having on this show. I see the amount of people that approach me wherever I am and talk about this stuff. I think most people are good. I think it's possible. We just don't know who's going to lead this thing, who's going to just give us, some people to look and be like, I could vote for that person in good conscience, and enough of this nonsense and all of that. I don't know. I hope some things are gonna happen. let's see. Machine guns have been illegal since the 80s, so I don't see how the gun debate applies today. So there's all sorts of, that's the other thing. There's so much confusion as to what guns are legal, what guns this guy had. It sounds like he had a whole bunch of other guns in the back. How premeditated was this whole thing? All of those things. Yeah, we don't have this conversation. We don't have this conversation particularly effectively. We got to get back to do it. The only person I consider to be sick is the killer. The press and the politicians are just irrelevant to me. I think that's a perfectly fair way to view this, that the sick person here, regardless of why he did it, is the man who did it, right? When someone does these things, whether it's a suicide bombing or whether it's a mass shooting or whatever it is, who can you blame? You can blame the person that did it, and then you can extrapolate further if you can figure out an ideology that they did it in the name of, again, be it religious or whatever it is. If that ideology is telling people to do these things, then you can also critique the ideology. Critiquing an ideology is not being bigoted towards a whole group of people. It's only being bigoted towards the people that are using the bad parts of any particular ideology, okay? So as far as that, I hear you on that. And then the second part, that the politicians and the press are just kind of irrelevant. Yeah, I mean, they all rush. I mean, we know this story already. You guys know this story already. They rush to judgment. They immediately start pointing fingers. You immediately start to see, look, let's look at it this way. When you see it done this way, the way the shooting appeared today, I saw that, I think it was The Hill or The Week tweeted out, "We must ban all guns now." And that's the same equivalent as when a far right thing will say something about we must ban all Muslims now. These are, if it had been a terrorist in the name of Islam. So all of these sort of knee-jerk reactions to everything just to gin up more clicks and more craziness. I mean, you guys you get it. And I think more people are starting to get it. One thing I've been telling everyone is to be careful the next 2 days. The same media that we know is corrupt and disingenuous is the same media telling us the facts about this event. I'm very sympathetic to that view. The media has done a terrible job. I mean, you can listen to some of my interview with Candace about that, with Red Pill Black about that. You guys know my feelings generally on the mainstream media, and one of the things that I like about what has happened in an age of Trump is that the media has had, as Andrew Klavan called it, a truck ram through it. I've said that a chessboard is thrown up, whatever metaphor you like. The Death Star has been blown up, whatever you like. We're watching it crumble in real time. So every time the mainstream people start pushing stuff out, I do view it all with a very skeptical eye. That's a kind of scary place to be, because you have to be able to ascertain what's true, figure out what's true. And by the way, I'm pretty sure you have a job if you're watching this. You have a job. You might have kids. You might have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a dog or chickens or anything, or video games. You might have other things you want to do in your life except relentlessly hunt down the news and figure out what's what. So it does make it harder because it's now on all of us, which I think is a big thing. Some CBS exec got fired because she said she didn't care about the victims because they were probably all Republicans anyway. So I think I quickly saw something on that across Twitter for a second. I mean, imagine writing that. What is wrong with people right now? Imagine knowing that 50 human beings who you know nothing about them. They're at this concert. I guess this guy maybe was a country. I honestly don't even know who the musician was. But I think maybe he was a country singer. Irrelevant whether they're Republican or independent or have never voted or are atheists or whatever. It doesn't, or furries. It just doesn't matter. Imagine being having your heart so corrupted by this nonsense that you would be like, all right, Republicans should die. Or imagine if it was reversed and said, well, it's okay because it's all Democrats. It's all Democrats that were killed this time. No, this isn't the way it should be done. And when that shooter who there's a ton of evidence, the guy who shot up the GOP baseball game, softball game, there was a ton of evidence that he was watching MSNBC every day and reading all this far left drivel like Daily Kos and Mother Jones and the rest of them. Did people say, it's just the way we talk about this stuff is really nuts. Don't be that guy. How about that? Don't be that woman. Be better than that. Hey, Dave, I'm doing my graduation project on the myths behind recycling. I want to focus on the challenges of using reason to fight against the established norm. Do you think I could interview you to get your thoughts on that for my project. Well, if it's about specifically about using reason to fight against the established norm, I'd be happy to do it. So just send me a message through Patreon and remind me so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Interesting, the myths behind recycling. I don't know much about the myths behind recycling. I do live here in California, where we've got a blue bin and a green bin and a black bin. Black is for garbage, blue is for recycling, green is for green waste, you know, lawn and trees and that kind of stuff. And I do try to do all that stuff. You know, in LA also, I guess where I used to live in West Hollywood, they didn't have plastic bags. You only had paper bags, but they really want you to bring your own bag. Here, I try to bring my own bag when I can. All these little things, you know, at some level, it's like if we're doing all of these little things, and India and China are going through their industrial revolutions and putting out all this stuff in the atmosphere, are we really doing anything by putting our little bags? Maybe not, but if it does make you feel socially conscious and all that stuff, I think that's basically good. But I'd be happy to talk about that with you, at least the part about logic and reason in the framework of having a big, difficult discussion. Any thoughts on this new center and how it will manifest itself in the political sphere? Both parties are seen as so radical, it seems like the libertarians or independents can gain more traction. So I was really thinking about this last night. So here's where I see the inherent problem right now. I think that for those of you that are watching this right now, most likely you are in what I would call this new center. And the new center basically believes in individual rights. We will judge people as individuals, not groups. Pretty much socially conservative, meaning you don't mind what people do in the privacy of their own home. It's not for the government to regulate. And basically fiscally conservative, meaning the government shouldn't be spending tons of money that it doesn't have. And that we should have a small government, meaning we should respect states' rights. You should be governed by people who are your local officials, and not every edict in Washington should affect everyone across the nation. I think these are very simple ideas, actually. We should have a simpler tax system. You know, we shouldn't be doing nation building. We could talk about all that stuff. So I think these are pretty much simple ideas that most people are on board. Now they're being, oh, you know, I think I said socially conservative a second ago, not socially liberal. Anyway, I think most people are on board these ideas. Now here's the problem with them. Or here's the problem as I see it right now. Those ideas, which way are they going to pin more people off of is the real question. So if you hear that and you're just let's say you're a lifetime Republican or conservative or whatever, and you're like, you know what, these Republicans have done jack shit. They never were for small government. They didn't do any of the things I wanted. Paul Ryan never got anything done, blah, blah, blah. Well, you might be willing to now vote for this party. But what does that do? That then weakens the Republican Party. Okay, now I fear a leftist Democrat government more than I fear a Republican one. That's just where I'm at. You might disagree with me on that. Now, if you're a refugee of the left, as I once was, as many of you guys are, you might be into that party too. Now, if that party was basically the Libertarian Party, and then we can figure out how much government has to be involved in that. That's the beauty of, and I love this debate, the debate between sort of a classical liberal perspective and a libertarian perspective is how much government should we understand that we should be about the individual. We understand it should be about limited government, but how much government is the right amount? I think libertarians and classical liberals, why I see so much good conversation happening between them right now is because they're both open to that. And I don't think anyone's saying this is exactly how it has to be. It's not in line with either one of the ideologies to demand it. Okay. Now, the issue is which way would that party pull more people off of? And if your answer basically is that it would pull more people off the right, and then we get left with an authoritarian leftist government, I see that as a bigger problem than the other way around. But I think you could probably make some really good arguments for it the reverse way. All that being said, maybe you have to bite the bullet and do it anyway, meaning you do it, right? And let's say we really do it, right? We get the right candidate, we get all the cool people that you know that we've had on this show and many others, to really band around the idea of this third party, which most likely would be the Libertarian Party because it's on the, I think it's on all 50 states, the ballots. We just take over the party. I mean, I could freaking run for president. I could probably take over that party. Not that I'm going to do it. Now, the question, though, really remains is that, are you willing to dismantle one or the other party, and which one will you dismantle, and how many years of rule by the one that you don't dismantle are you willing to put up with? I think that 4 years of rule by the left, which at the moment is completely in bed with all of this SJW virtue signaling nonsense, is really dangerous. Now, is it the right? Right now, the question is, what is the right? Is the right small government? Is the right the things that it's supposed to be, or is the right Trump, or what is the right? I don't know what the answer to that is. But anyway, look, maybe you bite the bullet and you go, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to find the right candidate. We get somebody cool that gets it and all that stuff. You get Joe Rogan to run, right? And Colin Moriarty can be his VP. Okay, fine, you do it. You get these guys, and then let's say they do something miraculous. Let's say they get 25% of the vote. Gary Johnson got what, 3% or something? So they get like 5 to 7 times more of whatever Gary Johnson got, which would be unheard of. Is that enough to sustain a movement for the next 4 years to really make the dent? I don't know, but it might be worth it because this doesn't seem to be working. And although this isn't working in a lot of respects, I mean, keep in mind, anyone that's watching this in the United States, are you looking to move to another country? Because I'm not. Because you know what? There's pretty much food in every supermarket in America. There's pretty much running water in every supermarket in America. There's pretty much a police officer willing to die to do his job in every city in America. That doesn't mean we don't have problems. There were another 40 people shot in Chicago this weekend. By the way, nobody talks about that because it doesn't fit the general narrative. Again, it's a Democratic governor, it's a Democratic mayor, much like Atlanta and Ferguson and these other cities that have all these problems, and it doesn't really fit the narrative if you talk about those things. So the question is, do you bite the bullet and do it? I think you could argue it either way. I think it's really interesting. I could tell you this: if somebody really was doing it and approached me and approached a bunch of these people and said, we're gonna really take a stab at this thing, I would love to back something that I really believed in rather than having to deal with these two false parties that aren't doing much for anybody. Okay, let's see. You mentioned something about Harvard selecting what you could discuss. What did you mean by that? All right, so in case you missed that, one of the only stipulation that Harvard had related to our talk there was that if your talk is about free speech, then it is not open to non-students, which is very bizarre. It's the only thing like that. So in other words, if you had a talk on biology, which Brett could have given a talk on biology, I could have given a talk on Star Wars, Steve Simpson could have given a talk on constitutional law, that would have been open to non-students. For whatever reason, the school has a policy, which I did not know about until about an hour before, because I had all these people messaging me saying they were going to see me there, that then either found out they couldn't get in or literally couldn't get in the door. I snuck one guy in because he had come from far away. So I don't know. So basically, I don't know why they have this. Why just if you're talking about free speech can non-students not show up? So there wasn't anything that we couldn't talk about specifically. They let us talk about absolutely anything. And by the way, when we take questions, we don't know what the questions are. We live stream all of that. So I'm happy to do all of that always, of course. But for whatever reason, they don't want non-students doing a free speech event, which is a little bizarre to me. Any thoughts on Reuters as a reputable news source? Yeah, I think they're basically pretty good. I think they're basically doing journalism. I think probably sometimes I see things that I think there's like a little bit of what Eric Weinstein refers to as the Russell conjugation, where the headline doesn't quite match, or they put a picture to sort of color your feelings one way or another. But I think they basically are doing a pretty good job. What do you think is the most important relevant topic to talk about these days? I got into YouTube when the SJW phenomenon started to get crazy, but that has pretty much been beaten to death. This may be a hard question, but what are some of the cultural or political issues that don't get enough focus or need to be explored more? Well, it's interesting, and I think that's a great question. Look, the SJW stuff and the Oppression Olympics stuff and the virtue signaling and look, it's all tied into what I think is the most important thing, which is the free speech stuff. The ability for people to say what's on their mind, the ability for people to debate what's best, the ability for you to go to a school and not only learn from a teacher, but be able to challenge that teacher and be able to challenge the student next to you, and all of those things. Those are the things that will save a true liberal, pluralistic society. So I believe that those things, while I agree with you, I agree with your sentiment at some level. They've been sort of beaten to death, right? Like there's a zillion YouTubers doing it now. People get how the outrage culture has destroyed so much. They understand it. I would shave off a little bit. I wouldn't say it's been beaten to death. I think it's understood by a tremendous amount of people, but not everybody yet. Could all of us, including myself, focus energies sometimes a little bit elsewhere? Probably. And by the way, when we do shows where I don't hit on that at all, I find it refreshing. That being said, I can't just let it be. You know, it's one of those things. I heard this reminds me something interesting. Right after the election, I saw a lot of people being like, oh, now all these anti-SJW people can stop doing it because Trump won. So, you know, the SJW's lost, right? He's the ultimate anti-SJW, so they lost. And I thought that's a really, you know, I know most people are being sort of glib or sarcastic or just nonsensical when they're saying things like that. But it's a really poor way to view things. You know, I believe that these battles that we're all fighting, these intellectual battles, these are battles that are consistently fought, and your intellectual enemies, they can repopulate and they can sort of reassemble how they attack you and all that stuff. And the Trump win, although again, I did not even vote for Trump, and I did not feel this way the day of the election. The Trump win was a win for the anti-SJW people. It was a win in a weird way for individualism, because Trump is not liked by the collective media and Hollywood and the political establishment and all that stuff. That does not excuse any of this Trump stuff, okay? That you may not like about him or that I may not like about him. But it does explain that. So there was a win against it. And I saw a lot of people saying, well, now you got your win, so move on. But it's like, no, now you got your win, so you got to figure out what's next. You don't just happily move on. If you have your opponent down, you know, I don't like using violent terms on this, but if you got their foot on your neck and they've been trying to kill you for years, what do? That decision is up to you. So what are some of the other topics we should be talking about? I mean, I think the most important topic we should be talking about right now is, and I think we're hitting this pretty well on this show, is really what are rights? What is the role that government is supposed to play in your life? What is the government supposed to do? Is it supposed to give you health insurance? Is it supposed to give you a job or give you money or educate you or what? This is a great discussion to have. Everything else, if we all knew what government is, what does it say in the Constitution, the document with which we are governed by, what does it say in that document? And if we can get to what does that document say, and this is how we're going to be governed, then all of the other things, maybe that's part of it, is that the social justice stuff, even the well-meaning people, they're trying to legislate things that should not be legislated. You cannot legislate away hate or bigotry. You can acknowledge them. You can try to make people better through education. You can show people you're a good person, that they shouldn't judge you on your color and all that stuff, which, by the way, is very much what the left seems to be doing these days, while they keep accusing everyone of the right of doing it. So I think having people understand what role of government's supposed to have, understanding some political philosophy is important, understanding that we're in an extremely volatile state. The amount of information that we have right now is so off the charts. No one could have imagined this 20 years ago. The ability for us to connect and hear the ideas and the inspirations and the horrors and awful events all over the world all at the same time. I don't know that we're quite wired for that. And maybe that's why people are seemingly so hysterical these days. So I'm going to keep having these interesting conversations as they come. I mean, look, I hope you guys are proud of your support that you give us here on Patreon, because obviously we couldn't do it without you. But think about what we did last week. Monday, I put an episode up with a progressive lefty, Richard Lewis, who is one of my absolute heroes, even if I disagree with him on some stuff politically now, but truly one of my heroes my entire life through stand-up. If you watch towards the end, he starts saying these nice things about the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I challenged him on it. I said, actually, you should know what they're doing to my friends Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Majid Nawaz and Brigitte Gabriel, all people who have been across from me in an interview setting. And he immediately after, he said he wanted to find out more. And after the interview, he asked me, he said, please send me some stuff, which I did. That's how you do some good work. So we had Richard Lewis, famous lefty comedian, on Monday. Then on Wednesday, we had, no, not on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we had Candace Owens, Red Pill Black. So a really interesting young Black conservative who challenges every stereotype of what you're supposed to think Black people think, as stupid as a statement as that is. And then on Friday, we had our full interview with John Stossel, who, again, one of my heroes from childhood, who even before my sort of political awakening, a guy who I just would watch on 2020. I told him this. I'd watch him on Friday nights with my parents and my brother laying in my parents' bed. We were watching 2020 or I don't know what. And I remember watching this guy and just thinking, this is just a decent guy. This is a decent guy trying to find some answers. And so it was a thrill to talk to him. So what a diverse, interesting mix that we put on last week. And then this week, now we've just put up our interview this morning with David Smalley, who's an atheist. We had an interesting discussion about religion. And then tomorrow, or on Wednesday, we're putting up an interview that we shot already, which was a really, really interesting interview with Michael Malice, who is a journalist who spent a bunch of time in North Korea. And we did about an hour on North Korea, which we haven't talked about much on this show. I learned a lot from this guy. He knows his stuff. Really, really enjoyed it. Was born in Russia, had to leave Soviet Russia with his family. I mean, just has a really, really interesting story. So I'm going to keep trying to do things that are politically diverse and diverse on pretty much every front. And it's because you guys allow me to do it. Do I think Trump can be reelected? Can we trust the approval numbers? Well, first off, I would not trust the approval numbers. Let's not forget that all the people who got all the polls wrong before the election are the same people giving you the polls. So don't go by the polls. I just don't buy them at all. The polls are always right until they're wrong, and then they're wrong. Okay, so forget the polls. I would say, can Trump be reelected? Yes, absolutely. I think if anything, the average person likes him a little bit more now after all of just this stuff with the NFL and everything. Like, but that we could talk about the NFL stuff if you want. You guys know my feelings on it. I did a DM on it last week. The players can protest. The owners can use their free speech to get rid of players if they don't want them. The president can say what he wants. He can't put it into law if it's against the Constitution. And you have a voice into either buying jerseys and watching games or not. So everyone is using their free speech right now. This is how a society is supposed to work. This isn't Armageddon. So I think that Trump can be reelected. My gut feeling is that he would pass it off to Pence somehow. Perhaps, maybe. It's not even worth going that far. I think he can be reelected. I think the Democrats are in absolute disarray. I think the Democrats, that's the more interesting piece to me of this. It's not whether Trump gets reelected or not. It's what are the Democrats going to come back with in 3 years from now? Are they going to come back with and say, we've doubled down on absolutely everything in identity politics, and we're going to just pick out our niche little minority groups to link together despite all of their competing interests and play the suppression Olympics so that that can become big enough coalition to win? Or what I would prefer they do, and then I could actually vote for a Democrat again, which I did my entire life, would be that we're going to abandon identity politics. We're going to come back to liberal principles of the Enlightenment and live and let live, and show people that the government isn't the end-all be-all, show people that the oppression Olympics isn't the end-all be-all. Be okay with some states' rights and some limited government and some of those things. I suspect they're not going to do that, though, because there's just simply no evidence of them doing it. All right, let's see here. Thoughts on this new generation? I've heard that they're the most classically liberal generation in quite some time. And looking at the whole meme culture, it really seems to back that up. They are also possibly responsible for Trump's victory by teaming up with the frog god of chaos. Any opinions? That's interesting. Well, first off, if they're the most classically liberal generation, well, then that's the best news I've ever heard. I haven't really heard that. I guess what I've heard lately is that this group below the millennials is now becoming a little more conservative. Like, they see the chaos, they see the ridiculousness, they see the craziness. They aren't inherently racist. They don't like everything being drawn on racial lines and all that. So they are becoming more conservative. I actually think that's kind of interesting. I also think that in this case, Paul Joseph Watson and I think Milo even said it, and a few other people are right, that being conservative now is becoming counterculture, because the left has owned culture for so long that being conservative, and whatever that means to you, I don't mean that you mean this political thing or this political thing or that political thing, but being conservative meaning you want to, at this point, conserve some of the old way America was and the tolerance that we had. Not that we want to bring back racist policies of segregation or any of that kind of craziness. But if you want to turn back the clock to where we understood what the role of government was a little bit more, understood what the role of liberty was a little bit more, maybe a little bit more of some of the things that Ronald Reagan would talk about. I don't even think I've ever called to Ronald Reagan before ever. But then that would be nice to hear if that's actually what they're doing. But you're right that group by teaming up with the frog god of chaos. I mean, look, this is why it's so impossible to say what the alt-right is. So yes, are there a degree of true white supremacists or neo-Nazis or actual racists running around? Yes. Now, first off, are those people on the right? I'm not sure, because people say they're Nazis, but the Nazis were the National Socialist Party of Germany. That's left. It's a collectivist movement. So I think people say Nazis, they're far right. I'm not sure that that even actually makes sense. I think they were actually far left. But putting that aside for a second, do some of these people exist? Yes. But is what you're referencing actually more of a reality? That there was sort of this shit-stirring group of frog people who decided to mess with everybody and make celebrities and politicians crazy on Twitter? Yeah. And am I okay with good-natured trolling? Absolutely. And even bad-natured trolling, I don't have to listen to it. I can mute you or block you, but I believe you have a right to do it. I don't think it's great for society, the stuff that's, where people really want to burn down the American system or any system. Well, I guess there's certain systems that could be burned down, okay, but this system specifically. But that's what I don't. If we knew what it was, what this thing is, then I think we could all diagnose it a little bit better. But I think you actually have a decent handle on what it is. Did news of the Edmonton terror attack make it south of the border? Cop stabbed, drunk, truck hit 4 people. ISIS flag found in truck. Thankfully, nobody died. So Edmonton, obviously in Canada, and apparently a Somali refugee was charged in this. You know what? I've been trying to stay offline for the weekend, so I guess it happened yesterday, the day before, so I did not see too much. I didn't see much chatter about it even when I got back on today, but of course Las Vegas happened, so these things get bumped all over quickly. Unfortunately, I suspect, even if that was not the case, even if I had been online and it had happened on a weekday, it would not have got the coverage, of course, that it probably should have gotten, and I think we all kind of know why that is at this point. The SJW issue and free speech is still the most important issue because I still fear telling people that I'm libertarian or center-right. I worry just because I'm white, people automatically think I'm racist if I say I believe in small government in every part of our lives. I have great sympathy for that. And don't worry. First off, I have no reason to believe you're racist, unless you're posting a lot of other racist stuff on this Patreon page. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about with these kids at Harvard. First off, think about if you were to say to somebody, I'm small government libertarian, and they were to say, you're white and you believe in those things, so you're racist. That's actual racism. That is racism right there. First off, they're prejudging you, as I keep saying now, they're prejudging you on the color of your skin. This is not good, okay? This is not good, and this is exactly what they accuse everyone else of doing. The inherent problem here is that we don't have enough people like you stepping up and saying, look, if you're not racist, then it doesn't matter if someone calls you racist. So for example, I, Dave Rubin, am not racist. I don't judge people on the color of their skin, okay? So I don't have a look, if someone calls me a racist, which people call me racist on Twitter all the time, usually just anonymous losers, all right, what am I going to do? Now, it doesn't feel good. Nobody likes it. And for the first time you hear it, it's awful. And especially if it's a friend of yours who's judging you in that way, it's a terrible feeling. So I'm not diminishing that by any estimation. But if you are not a racist, then the truth is this word only has power because you're giving it power. And the more that good people like you, these libertarians or classical liberals or conservatives or defected leftists, the more that all of us say this stuff does not work. It is not true, it is not honest, and it is not how you have a conversation that will better this country. The more that all of us do that, the less power these people will have. And by the way, I think it is possible that they're losing power right now, and which is why they're acting so hysterically, which is why it went from it used to be a bigot, you used to be a bigot, then you used to be a racist, now you're a white supremacist. They barely use racist and bigot anymore. Now it's a white, because they've ratcheted it up, because it's starting to have less effect. So this is where I'm saying that we might actually be getting some wins. And we just have to be aware of that. But don't be afraid to say what you think. I mean, think about, that's what some of these kids were saying. And I do think I have a little bit of a difference on this with Ben Shapiro that I would like to talk to him about next time I have him in, which is that I think I've heard him say, or it's been paraphrased to me at least, that what he says when kids say to him, well, should I challenge my professor on this or that right now? I just want to get the grade so I can get into grad school and get a great job and get out. And he usually said, I think what he says is suck it up while you're in college, get out of there, and then you can do it. I disagree with that premise, and I hope I'm not misquoting him on that, or at least loosely quoting him on that incorrectly. What I believe is that if you're in college right now and you're afraid to say what you think, do you think it's going to get easier when you get out into the real world? You think it's going to get easier when you suddenly have a spouse and a kid and bills to pay and all that stuff? You're going to be like, all right, I'm 24 and I'm going to start saying what I think. I don't think so. I think there's something about being young and being edgy and having that desire to fight the power and change the world, that the world will eventually grind you down. So if you don't do it now, when else are you going to do it? So I don't know what, first off, I don't know if you're a college student, the person that asked me this, and regardless, I don't want to do anything. I wouldn't want to give you any advice that would get you into any kind of real trouble, but I think we need more people willing to say. Everyone else, you know, all the bad guys these days seem willing to say what they think, right? All these hysterical leftists are always willing to say what they think and tell you how you should behave. And all these people on the right, you know, on the far right, are willing to tell you, you know, when I'm talking, the actual neo-Nazis or whoever they are willing to tell you about the great white nation they want to live in or whatever the hell it is. Well, how about the rest of the sane people start saying what they think? Not forcing anyone to believe it, but at least saying what we think. I think that would be a good start. Let's see. I'm sure you have your own reliable sources in this arena, but if you ever have any questions about military type stuff, including today, unfortunately, I'm happy to provide context. I appreciate that. You know, I've had a few people, and maybe you're one of them, I've had a few people reach out and offer some advice from a military perspective, which I do want to get into more. You know, when I had Blair White on and we talked about the trans stuff in the military, you know, we both completely acknowledge neither one of us are in the military. Neither one of us know what it's like to deal with those pressures. Neither one of us know what, you know, that already members of the military have higher suicide rates. And we know trans people have higher suicide rates. If you combine those, what does that do? All of those things that I think we should be a little more respectful of the members of the military and what military has to do and go through in the first place. So I appreciate that, and maybe I'll take you up on that one of these days. If you want to talk about rights more, you should have Randy Barnett back on. Reading his book gave me the understanding of natural rights that I think is still best to be used today. So Randy Barnett, if you didn't see, he was the first ever interview we did with our partnership with Learn Liberty. Oh, which by the way, I'm very happy to announce, I guess I can tell you guys now, that Learn Liberty has re-upped with us for all of 2018, which is great and is truly the best kind of partnership there is. The nature of our partnership is that every month they sponsor one of our shows, and all that means is that they give us a list of people. They have a network of thousands of professors and speakers across the country, and they give us a list of people that they think might be good for us, and usually they've been classical liberals, and we've had some great people on, like Steve Davies from the London Institute of Economics, and Randy Barnett from Harvard Law and Georgetown U, and Deirdre McCloskey, and just a litany of great people. I was trying to think of the guy from Clemson. I'm blanking on his name. Suddenly he had a beard and glasses, and his name was, I'm blanking on it. But anyway, Randy Barnett was the first one we had on through Learn Liberty. And Learn Liberty even sponsored, they just liked Phil DeFranco. So they said to me, if you want to have him on, we'll donate some money to a foundation that he is for, which we did. So it's a great partnership. They ask nothing else of us, and they expect nothing else of us, and it's truly great. Anyway, I absolutely will have Randy Barnett on. He just tweeted the other day that how much he enjoyed doing the show and that he'd like to do it again. So we will get him back on for sure. I got to listen to Randy speak. He gave a keynote speak at a conference I was at in Dallas a couple months ago. I was at a really interesting talk. It was for a weekend in Dallas, I think in June, where it was about 400 or 500 college professors who all got together for a weekend to just discuss how do we combat the free speech thing, the free speech freeze on campus. So it was all professors, basically, a couple administrators, and then I was sort of the only person there that was there as an entertainer or as a public person, talking about it from my perspective. So I talked about how I try to get some of these ideas through to my audience, and why I've had some of these people on, and what are the types of things that we talk about, and all that. It's pretty great. And actually, at that conference, I think you'll just find this to be sort of interesting. At that conference, I met all sorts of people. And apparently I met someone who I didn't know who they were, and I still don't know who they are. But they're the person that's going to personally will be funding our 2018 with Learn Liberty. So it's someone that wants to remain anonymous. I wrote a letter to Anonymous just thanking them for supporting what we do. So it really is a beautiful partnership. I don't even know where the money came from, and it doesn't even matter. And they're just going to keep giving us some great thinkers and talkers and academics, and we'll keep doing that. But yes, we will absolutely have Randy back on. And let's see. And wonder if you would have Malcolm Gladwell on. That would be a great interview. You know, he's on our list. He's on the list. We've got the master list. He's on the list, and we'll keep you posted on that one. Oh, and you know, I will address this one other thing for this purposes of this. So Dog Jones just sarcastically said, Koch brothers money, what a sellout. So I know a few people have said that Ruben's getting Koch brothers money through Learn Liberty. Now, Learn Liberty is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit think tank that promotes classical liberalism. Look at their YouTube page. It's a YouTube channel. And they create all videos that are all within the same school of thought of the things that I care about. As I just said, they have no decision-making power of what I do. They give us a guest, we do our thing, that's it. Apparently, the Koch brothers are one of many people who donate money to them. As I just said, the person that's donating to us for next year is an anonymous person who I have no idea, and they have no control over anything we do or anything like that. I know people love stupid conspiracy theories. And by the way, the amount that they're giving us is a fraction of what the total company's money is. It's not even close to the number that we're getting on Patreon, without getting too into the weeds or anything like that. But I appreciate your sarcastic comment, and it's good for me to address that with you guys. If you have any questions like that, I do want to be as transparent as I possibly can be, and I will continue to do so. Anyway, this hour flew by. I thank those of you guys that watched this live. I hope that you are happy with the product that we're putting out. I'm really proud of what we're doing. As I said, we got some great guests coming up. Tomorrow, I'm going to leave a couple for surprises, but we got some big ones coming up. I just heard about this Thomas Sowell thing, which I'm thrilled about. And yeah, big things coming. I know the world seems a little crazy at the moment, but I'm going to keep trying to do some sense making around here and bringing on people that I think are trying to do the same. And I hope you guys are proud to support what we do. And I hope that you're making some sense out of things in your own lives, and that you're able to take some of these videos and maybe show them to people. So for that question before about, well, I'm afraid to say I'm a libertarian because they'll just say you're a white racist. Well, share some of these videos. Maybe share a video from Larry Elder, or share a video from Candace Owens, or share a video from me or Douglas Murray or anybody, and say, well, here's some ideas that maybe you never thought about it this way. Maybe you never thought about, well, that the government isn't supposed to do this actually, but that doesn't make you racist. Or because I think differently on taxes or abortion, it doesn't make me a right-wing maniac or an alt-right neo-Nazi or any of that stuff. I think we can get through to people. I think people are basically good. I know you guys are good, and I thank you for your support. And new show out on Wednesday. All right. Ciao.